What's up, you guys? Welcome to another episode here on Sharkstalgia, where I talk about all things 80s and 90s in the form of modern era comebacks. And in today's episode, we are going to be talking about episode 3 of Samurai Troopers, aka Ronin Warriors, here in the US. And this will definitely be a spoiler review for those who have not seen the episode just yet. So, if you haven't seen episodes 1 and 2 review spoilers, go ahead and check that out on the channel. But without wasting any more time, let's go ahead and talk about this one. Now, episode 3 was a little bit of a curveball, and it has its moments as well as being a little bit of a lackluster episode. Now, let's talk about some things in terms of, I'm going to go out of order just so it makes a little bit more sense in regards to character story arcs and the story development for these particular characters. So episode 3 heavily focuses on the character Yama. Now we briefly see the introduction to Yama as he was basically like a hired I don't know what you call it there in Japan, but you're kind of like a cosplayer or like someone that's just in a uniform for like carnivals and just to like attract little kids, just to kind of be in the entertainment industry. So he was doing that during the invasion from Ramaga's army, and then he found out that because people were dying, that the samurai troopers were not doing anything, and then he decided to take matters into his own hands. And then we also find out that Yama didn't necessarily get, I guess you can say, added into the samurai trooper lot because I guess he just didn't make the final cut, as well as Kaido, which he does explain later on. But Yama is a type of character who's just always screaming. He has a temper, and this is where it really gives you that whole modern anime style where the eyes are start bugging out. They have like the bubbles, and it gets a little bit more of a comedy routine. And yeah, so it kind of becomes in that realm where I wasn't too really fascinated because it just takes away from the dark and edgy storyline that the original Ronin Warriors had to offer. However, Yama is also one of this guy where they give you kind of like a horny scenario where he looks at the female Miri, I believe that's how you pronounce her name. They kind of show her like a little bit up close and just all her body parts, and it kind of gives it like a little bit of a comedy routine. But again, I didn't find that really humorous. It was just like, oh man, like why do they have to include this kind of stuff within this particular series? Because the original Ronin Warriors, man, they didn't care about all this stuff. They had a mission, they had a purpose, and they had to figure it out, how to defeat Talpa, right? At least in the U.S. name. So where it gets a little bit slightly emotional, nothing too crazy, but we do find out that Yama and Mushashi were actually both orphans, and I believe their father or somebody of like a father figure, I don't even know, uh, whoever took them in, maybe it was their teacher. I didn't really pay too much attention to that. Yeah, they were actually an abusive person. So Yama decided to save Musashi from being abused by their quote unquote father figure, and they ran away, which in this case they found a signature samurai trooper or a Ronin warrior. Now, we get to see the bottom half of the character, but we don't necessarily know who that is. Now, I don't know if that's an original Ronin warrior or samurai trooper from the old series, or is that a newer, later one? I don't know. But they did reference that this person was a samurai trooper, and he kind of paved the way for both of them to become heroes for that matter. So, next, let's talk about the 10 Braves. We don't necessarily see much about those characters either because in episode 2, we get to mourn the loss of the character Nezu, who died at the hands of Ryu. No, sorry, at the hands of Guy. So in this episode, we're finally introduced to the next character out of the 10, which is the ninth one. This one is, I believe his name is Kama Naosuke. Hopefully I said that right. I apologize if I botch it, but we're heading into that villain now. And I believe this villain has like the powers of combining the puppets into this one gigantic form. And yeah, it was just it was kind of interesting. For it was a very 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 brief battle that they offered, but I'll get to that by the end of this review. So yeah, so today's episode villain was Kamanausuke. Hopefully, if I said that right, and I apologize again. But aside from that, this whole episode kind of focuses on the 5 characters now, because now we have Kaido, we have Ryu, we have Guy, we have Musashi, and we have Yama. And within this section, we get introduced to their training portion, because now knowing that the quote unquote hired samurai troopers were phonies or just poster boys, these characters wanted to become the next heroes, and but before they do that, they have to go into the training portion. So kind of think of it as the Matrix, where you're sitting on a chair, you get your mind gets transported into another dimension kind of thing, and then you're training there. And I believe they said like they need 1 month training, but there's like, I think it's like 1 week equals, I think 7 hours equals like 1 week or something. I don't know, but regardless, it's like a simulation program. So within that particular aspect, they're all butting heads. They're all arguing with each other. They're all like having trust issues. They're all trying to figure out how to work as a team. They're Ryu is basically the teacher who is trying to help them get their Under Armour. So we finally get a little brief explanation about the bracelets that they're wearing, and he talks about how the bracelets, or I think it's called weapon gear, I believe that's what the subtitles are saying, and this utilizes their under gear before they reach the armor. And with that, he does explain that the original samurai troopers or Ronin warriors did not need to have that specific bracelets because they were chosen to wear the armor, whereas this one, it was specifically designed and created for them to utilize the armor. So I'm not really a big fan of this, because the original Ronin warriors were chosen people, right? These are, yes, they are chosen too, but it's like the bracelets are kind of acting like Power Ranger morphers, if that makes sense. So regardless if they're utilizing their armor pieces, Yama is the only one who's not able to obtain his undergear, because, like I said before, he has a lot of anger and he needs to really calm down and relax in order to summon it. Within the training portion of the episode, you do see Kaido, Guy, and Musashi kind of utilize their armor, and they're just training, going through all like the rigorous, simulations, and they're getting their ass kicked. And yeah, it's kind of like a cliche moment in a cartoon or movie kind of style, but it is what it is. But here we get a very fascinating part of the story or the episode, where Ryu kind of shows us that he is hurting on the inside. He keeps holding on to his heart. And there is a specific scene in this episode where we see Kaido observe this, and he's realizing that Ryu is having health issues. He's taking meds and he's not really feeling well. So there's a very, 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 very good chance, or should I say not very good chance, it's most likely that Ryu is going to die at some point, because despite him being like a teacher to these other 4 characters, his health is not doing well, so he's most likely going to die at some point within the series. So now we just have to see how or why. But then they get they get interrupted in their training simulation, as they were told that there's the puppets, as I mentioned in the previous episode, that are like the zombies. They're infiltrating the stadium where they have to go protect the civilians who are held underground. So you do see a slight little battle, and there's not much fighting here, as there's a lot more talking than fighting. But there is a slight little plot twist where Guy does betray Musashi and tries to kick his ass, and because he finds out that we find out that Ramaga has some sort of a plan, because he no longer has his son Guy to utilize his body as a vessel, which I explained in episode 2. So now this is where it gets very fascinating, because it kind of clicked in my head that what if Ryu ends up dying, and then Ramaga ends up using Ryu's body as the vessel that Guy was supposed to be, And that's where it becomes very emotional later on in the series, where they all have to fight Ramaga, but it's also Ryu who is the vessel for Ramaga. Because as I explained in episode 2, Ramaga was supposed to use Guy's vessel once he turns 15, body as a vessel once he turns 15, but since Guy had a change of heart, and we know that Ryu is going to die at some point, this could be a turning point for the series, which could be a very, very, very interesting concept in the series later on. However, when it comes to the fighting, aside from the characters fighting the puppets, which again is very fast paced, there's nothing too crazy, nothing too intense to show. But we do get to see Yama utilize his armor finally. So he gets his orange armor, which is cool, nothing too crazy there. And then we see a battle between Ryu and the character Kamanosuke. Hopefully, if I said that right again. But this battle was very, very, very short. Lasted less than 30 seconds, maybe 15 seconds at most, and he ends up killing Kamanosuke already. So now there's out of the 10 Braves, we already lost 2 of them already, which is very, very fast paced and it sucks. But I don't know. Let's see what they're going to utilize in the next episode. However, this is where the plot twist happens by the end. Now, we get introduced in the middle. We see this new character who's kind of like in the shadows. It's kind of like a secret warrior utilizing the black hard suit. And he's kind of like how Anubis or the great, I forgot the master that was in the first series. I forgot his name, the one with the hat that Anubis utilized his powers as. I totally forgot his name. He's kind of acting as that, like a slight little protector. But then we find out that that character who is rocking the black hard suit ends up being the character SHION. Now, if you guys know, SHION is the character who's donning the green armor in all the promotional images. So even though he's wearing the black armor right now, and with Ryu being sick, this is kind of filling the direction in the sense of Ryu will probably die. Cheyenne will eventually lose the black armor, and then um he'll take the armor of the green armor that Ryu is wearing. So I thought that was actually pretty cool, but there's a lot to be desired in this episode. A little bit lackluster, a little bit fast paced, but it is what it is. So hopefully, future episodes do continue to be a little bit more emotional, a little bit more intense in storytelling. But at the end of the day, it's not too bad. So I would give this episode like maybe a 7.5 out of 10. Nothing too crazy happens here. The comedic stuff really kind of ruined it for me, but it is what it is. But I do like the concepts of the story involving Kaido. At least the 10 Braves are still cool. Ryu and his heart failure, I suppose, and Cheyenne being like the plot twist of the whole episode. So that's about it. I don't really have much to say. So we'll see what happens next week on episode 4. So with that being said, thank you guys all for watching. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for subscribing. And I will talk to you all next week as I will review episode 4, the spoilers when that time comes. But if you guys are enjoying this video, please hit that subscribe button because it'll definitely help the channel grow. And let me know in the comments below what you thought of episode 3.